welcome to 1322 Life. I'm so excited. Let's dive right in. So this week we have Miss Annette, and let me tell you, she is just a blessing. I love her story and her testimony that she will be sharing with everyone today. I've had the pleasure to get to know her, and I mean, it's just a breath of fresh air. So hope you guys love hearing Miss Annette as much as I have loved learning about her and chatting with her. So Annette is a health and wellness advocate, coach, and motivational speaker who guides individuals and groups to take a proactive and preventative approach to vibrant living through healthy lifestyle choices. Her signature 5 Principles of Health workshop is an engaging experience designed to educate, encourage, and support those living with chronic health conditions. She provides actionable strategies to achieve healthier habits with a positive mindset. As a type 1 diabetic since age 2, Annette is a living example of embracing these key principles for enjoying a life of focus, productivity, and purpose. Welcome, Miss Annette.
Woohoo! Oh, wait, that's for me. Thank you.
Yes. I'm so happy to have you here. Really, your bio doesn't do you justice because I was reading, I was like, this doesn't even go into the impact that your story truly has.
Yeah.
So just share with us, you had said in your bio, you were a type 1 diabetic diagnosed at age 2, but diabetes was handled a lot differently when you were younger.
Oh, yes. Yeah. If I did write a book once telling people all about this, but yeah, diabetes, I wasn't at that time. They diagnosed me at what was known as a juvenile diabetic. There were juvenile and they were adult, and they were very, very, very different in how they were managed, and even in the description of them. But now, type 1 is someone who is insulin dependent, who has your pancreas just basically isn't working. But back in the dark ages, as I like to call them, of diabetes, diabetic management wasn't even a term. Doctors had no clue. And they would tell my mom and me as I was growing up, she's probably going to die young. She probably will never see adulthood. And yeah, we'll see you in a year if you're still around. Take care. And they would not give me any kind of tools or resources as to what to do about it because they didn't have the tools or resources. So I say often, I hold no bitterness towards the medical profession at that time because they didn't know. They didn't know what they didn't know, and therefore they couldn't help me to figure out what to do with myself and how to improve my health, basically. And my mom, bless her heart, I say to this day, I'm alive because number one, God wanted to keep me around. He has a purpose for me. Number two, the determination of my mother. And number three, my own, what I call spiritedness, my own, I'm not going to let this get me down. But my mom was just amazing. She would ask the doctor questions, and she was continually trying to figure out what to do because it just wasn't the kind of information that she needed to be able to help me not be sick all the time. I was in and out of the hospitals the whole time, near death on several occasions. But my mom, and I asked her once, I said, how in the world did you manage that? She was a single mom. I said, how did you manage that? How did you not just go off the deep end? And she said, repeatedly, she said, I would hand you over to God and say, God, I don't know what to do here. She's your child. You have to take care of her or take her home so that she's not suffering so much. And when I heard her say that, my heart just broke because I thought, oh my goodness, for a mother to say that about their child, take them home so they won't suffer anymore, if that is what you want. He obviously wanted to keep me around a little bit longer.
Of course. I mean, but that is just ooh, that really touches my heart because it's one of the other stories you told me about your mom tells me her amazing faith with God, her amazing walk. But two, as a mom,
Yeah.
I don't know if I could ask God to take my child. I don't know if I can like even like make that option. Not that it's up to me at all,
Right.
right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
I would just be going to God like, fix it, Jesus. Like I have to have my baby. Don't you dare take my baby. Like, for her to just be in a place where she's like truly relinquishing all control to God and saying,
Right.
hey, not my will, but your will, God.
Yep.
Take care of my baby, heal my baby, whichever way you see fit, whether
Right.
it's here on earth or in heaven with you.
Right.
Um, that is just powerful. That
And
is,
this is even more amazing when you hear this. She had wanted a girl uh, ever since she had gotten married, and she had 5 boys.
oh my gosh.
I'm sorry, 4. I added one in there. She had 4 boys, and every time one of them was born, she's like, "Is it a girl?" And the doctor's like, "No, sorry." And then when I was born, the doctor said, "It's a girl," and she's like, "I don't believe you." Laughing hysterically because I'm like, what do you mean? You were telling, you wanted a girl and you weren't sure about this. And so yeah, she just always wanted a girl. And so when I was born, the doctor held me up to her and said, "See, it's a girl."
They had to prove it. She was like, look, it's not
Exactly.
luck. This is going to be another boy.
No, they had to prove it. And I'm like, I think I understand where some of my trauma may have come from because I told the doctor, "Show that baby up there." But the fact that I was just, she wanted a girl, she finally got a girl, she was
Yeah.
so happy. And then for things to start turning the way that they did, and then for her to be able to say that, "God, I hand her over to you if that's what you desire right now." Oh my gosh, this
Mm.
breaks my heart when I think about it. But that was her faith. That was her
Mm.
faith and commitment to God, that she knew she wasn't in charge of my life. She had birthed me, but beyond that, she was trusting God for what was going to happen. And so that was the testimony that I grew up with. Talk about a testimony. It was pretty.
That is beautiful. Like that is so powerful. And
Yeah.
to have your mom be the one walking out that faith walk, like you didn't have to go read the Bible. You could just read the book of your mom. Like you could
That's
just see
right.
her and
Yep.
how she navigated through life and be like, okay, I just need to have faith like my mama.
Right.
That is
Right.
beautiful.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was, it definitely wasn't easy growing up, and definitely wasn't, it was one of those things. We didn't have a dad. He and my mom divorced when I was a year and a half old, and then he died when I was 4. So I never had a father. So my mom was, doing all of this stuff. She was paying bills and making sure the house was fixed right and taking care of the car and all of that. But again, it was a journey of her showing me that, yep, she had to do all that, but on the other hand, she got to do all that because
Yeah.
God gave her the grace and the strength and the wisdom to know how to manage life and how to do those things in a way that was for our benefit, but also for the glory of God. And it was definitely a challenge, but it was also just, as I became an adult, I would stop and look back on what she had done, and I mean, blow me out of the water. I would just be dumbfounded by, how in the world did you know how to do that? How in the world did you bring yourself to that or to this situation? And to some degree, she would honestly say, "I don't know. I don't know how I
Mm.
got the strength to, I don't know. I just know God told me what to do here." And that, well, that's the answer right there.
Yes, that is
But
the God.
yeah, God. But the fact that she trusted him and allowed him, she lived in the freedom of knowing that he was in charge and leading the way for where her children were going to go. But
Yeah.
even during all of that, I was in high school. And actually, up until I was in my late 20s, I still didn't know how to manage my diabetes. Doctors were just still not quite sure what they were going to do with me. And when
Mm.
I was 21, made it to 21, and oftentimes my birthdays were a confusing time because I'd say, "Wait a minute, I'm not supposed to be here. What do I do about that? I guess you just keep going." And that was
Yeah.
literally what I would say to myself: "I'm not supposed to be here right now because I'm supposed to be dead, but I'm not. So
Wow.
I just keep going." So with that, at 21, I started to lose my sight because my diabetes was so out of control. It wasn't being managed well. And one of the complications of diabetes is you start to lose your sight, your kidney function, and your heart. Those are the three main things that really they get hit hard if your blood sugars
Mm.
are out of control. And mine were. And so now I go from you're going to die young to you're going to go blind young as well. And I'm like, oh, great. So not only am I going to die young, I'm going to go blind in the process of that. I can laugh at it now, but at the time I was like, oh my gosh. But same story, doctor said, oh yeah, you're going to go blind. This disease, diabetic retinopathy, causes people to go blind. Fortunately, I never went completely blind, but enough severe damage was done from the disease and also from the treatments that they give you to save your vision. It's one of those funny things, which is worse, the treatment or the condition? And in this case, it's both. It really is
Mm.
both. But at that point in time, I was not walking as closely to God as I realize now, of course, that I could have been. But I had an appointment, basically a meeting with a gentleman who was a pastor. He was a professor. His kids and I had both gone to high school together, and he was also going blind from a totally
Mm.
different reason. And my mom, in her wisdom, made an appointment with me to talk to him. And she said, I think you need to talk to him and just share what's going on in your life, because I was in a state of
Mm.
severe depression, just panic attacks and fear because I'm going blind.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I'm losing something I have had my entire life. And this is what that man said to me. He said, Annette, you are losing something you have had your entire life and that you had every thought in your mind that you were always going to have. But now it's going away. And like the loss of a limb or a loved one, you are mourning the loss of your eyes. And that statement just caused me to what? And I thought, he's right. I'm this is depression. This is severe depression. And this is what mourning is like, because you can't do anything about it. You cannot change the trajectory that's happening right now in your life. And then he said to me, he said, Annette, I got two questions for you. And I know you won't be able to answer them right here and now, but later on you will. He said, you need to ask God two things. Number one, what do you want me to learn from this situation? What do you want me to learn about you, God, or about myself from this situation? And number two, the question is, and who do you want me to be as a result of this, God?
Mm.
And he goes, that's the more important question. And at the time, I was like, I would burst into tears at at a sideways glance because I was so emotional. I just burst into tears and I'm like, I can't answer those questions. And he's like, no, I don't expect you to. But now, but now, I look back on that time and I was just even today thinking about the idea of having a grateful heart and having gratitude, which to me is just so important in your life as a
Mm.
believer. If you are not grateful about every single solitary thing that happens to you, you might want to rethink that idea, because being grateful even for the challenges, even for the struggles. And today I look back and I say, I am so glad that God allowed me to go through the situations and the complications that I have, because it has made me who he wanted me to be as I'm getting ready to head off to heaven someday. Because everything that happens to us down here is getting us ready for heaven. And I look at this and I say, did I enjoy it? No. Was it fun? Not in the least. Was it something I'd wish on anybody else? Absolutely not. But to this day, I am grateful for what God allows me to go through, including losing my sight and just all of the other situations that have happened, because I know that I am resting comfortably in his hands, and I trust him for what he's going to do. But that was at
Yeah.
21 pretty pivotal in my life. And that was, I say that God began to just turn me around at that point, because up until that point I knew Jesus and I believed in God, but I was just living my, day-to-day 21-year-old
Yeah.
life. It's all good. I got a rosy future in front of me. Everything's good. And then and I went,
Yeah. That can make
what's
you
that?
really depend on God.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's how I try to look at all of the still have those medical complications today and other things, but I try to look at them and say, okay, God, this is another opportunity for me to depend on you. Here we go.
So what would you say you learned from going through losing your sight? Was it gratitude or was it just to depend on God? What would you say was the thing that God wanted you to learn from losing your sight?
I believe it is the total dependence upon him. I now call it desperate dependence because
Mm.
because I often feel like many Christians, including myself, we're not desperate enough for God. We don't
Mm.
recognize our sin as being as serious as he wants us to. But also, I believe that we're not desperate enough for him because we're independent. We're
Oh yeah.
strong. We can do this by ourselves. We got this. And
Woo!
yeah, and those are all statements that, well, in one framework or another, okay. But if you're looking at it as a follower of Jesus, you're
Yeah.
not all good. You don't have this. You cannot
Mm-mm.
make this on your own. You have to be desperately dependent upon Jesus for every single solitary thing in your life, for your finances, for your health, for your relationships, for your career, for anything and everything that happens in our life. I believe that we have to have that desperate dependence upon God. And I think if more believers would look at it in that way, oh my gosh, what we could do in this world.
That
but
is so
but
amazing.
that idea that he just said to me, I want you to know that I love you dearly, but you're trying to do this on your own. And I need your attention right now. And yes, this is going to hurt. But in the end, I believe you. I know he knew I would be grateful one day. And in that desperate dependence upon him for that and for everything. It still took me a long time to process through that, and a couple of
I
other
imagine.
crises had to happen. But every single thing that I believe that he calls me to go through is that opportunity to depend on him more, to love him more, and just to to basically say, God, I know you're not going to waste this pain. I know you're not going
Mm.
to, that it's not going to be for no reason whatsoever. You're going to use it. And I look forward to how that's going to turn out. Right now, I ain't happy. Right now, this is causing me pain. Right now. And I feel it's perfectly good for us to verbalize that to God, to say, I am not in my happy place right now. This is causing me pain. This is hurting me. There's nothing wrong with telling God how you're feeling, although he already knows it. Just say it to him, but then follow it up with a, but God, I know you're going to use this, and I look forward to how you're going to be glorified through this situation that you're using me to be a part of.
Yes, I love that. That is so beautiful. I love your take on it and just like your zeal for life. Your like I don't know, just from when I met you, you just had like there's just so much purpose and joy that you just give off. I mean, there's some people where it's just like I look forward to talking to you, Annette, because it was just like, oh, I know this is going to be a great conversation. Annette just is filled with joy and love. Like, your love comes through your words. And
Thank
um
you.
I really do see like that's only the light of Jesus. Like, our light is his light's supposed to shine through us. And I can definitely tell you that Jesus' light shines through you greatly. And
Thank you. Yeah.
I want to know the other answer to the second question he asked you, which was, who is it that God wanted you to be?
Oh, I love that one. Who is it that God wanted me to be? Well, number one, you kind of just said it, a person of joy and enthusiasm. At that point, you're going to laugh when you hear this too. But at that point, I was an incredibly shy, withdrawn, very timid person.
What?
And yeah, I know. If you talk to my brother, he would say, "Yep, that's how she was." All right. I was incredibly withdrawn and shy because I had spent most of the time in the hospital and near death. That does something to you.
Yeah.
That there is no joke about that. And so I was very fearful about everything because I was afraid that in every step, well, yeah, but I might die here. Well, you take off this or do this.
Mm.
Oh yeah, but I might die here. I mean, those words just kept coming back to me all the time, and it caused. I mean, when you're in the hospital, I know they do it differently now, but you're a child in the hospital for 3, 4, 5 days at a time. So your mom can only come before she goes to work and when she comes home at the end of the day. You're not with your friends. You're not at school. You're sometimes isolated because they're you may have an infection that they don't want the other kids to get to. All the people that you see in the caregivers are nurses and doctors and white coats and sterile. That does something to you. It really does. And I don't necessarily dwell on that, but I say that caused me to be very, very insecure, very, very timid and withdrawn. And by the time I reached 21, I was still dealing with that. But I believe that even in this situation, the strength and courage that God gave me through that time is where he literally kind of brought me out of my shell, as I say.
Mm.
And I became much more, because of my dependence on him, much more confident, much more assured of myself, much more, which you would think you're going blind. That should cause you to be more fearful. And yes, for a time it did. But as I went through that, and again, just trusting on God, trusting in him to help me through this, I became someone, and the real me began to come out. Sometimes I think people were not happy about the real me, but out she came. And I discovered that I had a voice, and I discovered that I oftentimes would question why people were doing what they were doing, namely people in authority like professors or like yeah, and I would ask questions not in the way of trying to incite conflict, but simply needing to understand more. What was going on here? What happened here? I one time had a class that it ended in a really odd and weird way, and we were allowed to give ourselves our own grade, which I thought, I'm not sure about that. And I remember as we were walking past a piece of paper where we had our name and we were supposed to write the grade we thought we deserved. And I was watching these guys, I will say that, who were saying 5 minutes earlier, did you study for the test? No, I didn't study for the test. I didn't study for much of anything we did in this class. And I watched them walk by and give themselves an A plus. And
Mm.
I'm like, okay. So I went to the professor after the class was over and I said, would you please explain to me what you were trying to do there? What was going on? What was happening? And I did not do well up until that point in any of the classes. It was really hard because that's the time I was going blind as well. And I struggled through all of the reading and all of the testing. And I said to him at this conversation, I said, I watched people who I verbally heard say, I didn't study for anything. And I studied my butt off and they gave themselves A, but I had ended up on, at least to that point, I had like I think a B minus. Now understand, I liked A's and B's, but a B minus, come on.
I understand. I understand. Hey.
I was not happy. And I had worked my butt off. And I said, I don't think how you did this was fair. I don't think as a teacher, it was responsible on your part.
Mm.
I let him, and then I realized after I said it, I went, oh, wait a minute, he hasn't given them the final grade yet. Maybe I should have waited until that came out. But lo and behold, he gave me an A minus in the class. And I went to him afterwards and I said, thank you. And he goes, you were the only one who came to me and talked to me about what I had done. And he said, the fact that you were bold enough to come and confront me. And he said, I made a mistake in what I did. I wasn't prepared to give the final and it was my fault. And that's why I did what I did. But he said, you were the only one who called me on it. And I was like, note to self, that's good, except remember timing is everything.
It is. And you should have gave yourself an A plus.
I didn't give myself an A plus, but he gave me an A minus. And I'm like, you know what? And that's what I discovered. I thought, I can talk. I do have a voice. I can say to people, why do you do that? And isn't there a better way? That was always my question. Isn't there a better way to do this? That's how God wired me. That's how he put me together. So I would come into any kind of situation, and I started working out of church as a children's pastor right after graduation. And I was looking at everything that was happening, and that was what was going through my mind. I don't think this is the best way to do this. I think there's a better way to do this. But what I discovered in the years since is that if you say that to people, it's they hear it one of two different ways. If you say, is there a better way to do this? They either hear, you're criticizing what I'm doing, you're judging me, and I don't want to hear anything you have to say,
Mm.
or they're hearing it in the way that it's intended. There probably is a better way. I just haven't figured it out. Would you like to talk? Could we talk about maybe what might be a better way? Once I get that open door, boom, I run through it. Once I hear, no, this is how we've always done it. This is just the way it is, and you're being too critical. Well, I'm not going to waste my time there because obviously they're not willing to listen to that.
Now,
But the who I became today from that time up until now is, in the introduction you said, a health and wellness advocate, and that is part of my character identity, is that I am an advocate. I am an advocate for people in their health and in their wellness, because I began to turn my health around. Finally, I met a doctor who it gave me instruction, information. He told me how to handle different situations, and I began to see my diabetes just make a sharp turn to where I wasn't. He actually said, I think we can address that death sentence that's been put on you, and we can make it a whole lot longer than it was given to you before. And we did. Together we worked on that. And it was his teaching and guiding me and directing me that as I would meet other people who either had diabetes or other health conditions, I would do the same thing. I'd say, well, isn't there a better way to handle that? Or
mm,
isn't there, have you discovered what it is you can do to make that change? And so I realized that I was an advocate for looking at things and analyzing them and evaluating them and saying, I think there's a better way. And yes, change is hard for everyone, but we're always in constant change every single day of our lives, whether we know it or not, and whether we like it or not. And the idea is, how are you going to handle that change? How are you going to deal with that change? If it's good change, yes. If it's bad change, you may need to stand your ground and say, nope, that's not working for me. But I like to come alongside and say to people, there is another way. There is a better way for you to manage your health and your wellness. But then I also am an advocate when it comes to spiritual maturity, because I think it's so important, having walked this many years with Jesus, that we can be at any point in time in life, no matter how old we are, and say, okay, I'm good. I don't really need to grow any further along. And I'm all right. I don't want to push myself any further. And why that happens, it is every person's story. I mean, why you get to that point in life is your story of why that happens. But I want to be able to come alongside and say, I understand that you may feel comfortable right now in your walk with Jesus, but I'm here to tell you that your comfort is not what it's all about.
I heard that.
Yeah, and so I want to help other people to understand that, number one, I believe that the challenges that we face in life, whether they again be financial or health, I've said this already, but all of those challenges that happen to us, they're happening for a reason, because God's wanting our attention, and he wants us to depend on him more and to grow in him. So if I'm helping you with your health and wellness, I'm going to bring in that aspect of my story and how God allowed me to understand that I needed to be responsible for my health. No one else was responsible but me. Same
Yeah.
principle applies if I can come alongside a believer and say, you are responsible for the relationship that you have with Jesus, but he calls us into community to move us forward through the work of the Holy Spirit to make that happen. Same
Yeah.
idea with your health and wellness. You're not alone. You are responsible, but you are not alone in doing that. And so again, back to that question, who has he called me to be? He's called me to be someone who is going to speak up, speak to health and wellness issues, but also to speak to the idea of spiritual maturity, spiritual growth, and how I can help in that process, either in my church, in a community Bible study that I'm a part of. How can I do that and make what God has allowed me to go through be a part of what continues to move me forward to bring him honor and glory in the process?
You know what I get from everything you're saying, which is just so beautiful. It's like also from your journey, your faith walk, right? Just looking at the book of Annette right now and what God has brought you through. You started off with at 2 being diagnosed after being like your mom's miracle baby, right? Because she finally got her girl after pushing out 5 kids. And back then, I don't know, I don't think they put her to sleep. Like having to push out 5 of you to finally get her girl and say, all right, we're going to shut up shop. And, and then to also, her and your dad didn't work out. So now she's a single mom of 5 during a time where it was a lot different. It was
Yeah.
women didn't even have nearly as many like rights and authority as we have now, couldn't do the same jobs that we can do now.
Right.
So the opportunities were not there. It's just so it really touches me because it's like this is really like a true story of like a very dark time.
Mm-hmm.
It's how it could have been viewed, a very dark time. And you said about the depression and then losing your sight. It's just like the story just kept getting worse. She's like, well, God, you take this baby if you have to, or heal her, like do something. And she has such an amazing faith, but then you didn't lose your vision completely. You can still see some, and that's beauty, right? There's beauty in that. It's amazing because it's decades later after that. Not to age you, but it's decades after when you started losing your vision and you still have some sight. There's a blessing in that. There's
Yes.
we could say, oh, she went legally blind, but no, God kept some of her sight. That's a blessing. And then how God kept you, and just I guess to give a little bit of a spoiler, how you said that when it came to your health, when they did your numbers and stuff, nowadays it's like that of a normal person versus someone with diabetes because it's managed so well.
Right.
And but this was also the little girl that they used to say she's going to die in her youth.
Yeah.
And like it's just like the look at the parallels to see how great of a blessing God has been over your life, how he's kept you, how he kept your mom. I mean, it's amazing. It's really a touching story, and I think it's great for us to still see that God is still in the miracle working business.
Oh,
uh,
yes. Oh, yes.
Yes, like doctors don't have the final say. God has the final say. God can be our
Yeah.
physician, our surgeon, our doctor. He will send us a means. He will send us a person that will help us. He will
Yeah.
send the right people in our life to help us to, for you, it was managed diabetes. But also I want to talk about a time that you told me about with your mom. So being a single mom of 5, you said sometimes it would be rough and you guys wouldn't have enough food. And what would your mom do? I'm gonna let you take it away because you tell it much better.
Yeah. Well, my mom had told me this story. She was working, but again, like you were saying, she had a high school education. That was it. And so she couldn't get obviously a job that paid a lot. And she would get to the a time of the month where she would say, I don't have enough money for rent or for groceries. I can't do both. So, you have to pick. Sadly, many, many women are still in that place today. Many single moms are still in that place today. And but at the time she would say, all right, God, I'm going to, pick to pay the rent so at least we have a roof over our house, and I have room for the kids to live. And then the next day, an envelope, a blank envelope would be under the doormat at the front door, and she'd pick it up and she'd look, and there was money, the money, I mean, almost the exact amount that she needed to go buy groceries that day. Or the other way around, where she would run, not have money for rent, she needed this much more and that much money. And she said that happened repeatedly. She never knew who it came from. She wasn't the type of woman who was a whiner or complainer, so she wasn't telling anybody that this was happening. And so the fact that she wasn't telling other people or asking to borrow money, which she would have, I think, if she'd gotten to the point where she knew that was what God wanted her to do. But I think it was, again, just that total dependence to say, God, I can't do this. I don't know what to do. You have to take this and you have to provide for my kids and I. That money would end up and there we would go. And then the amazing, I mean, even beyond that, that's truly an amazing thing. But the other thing is that my mom went from an entry level social worker, because her degree was only high school, and she had entry level social worker and ended up being the manager of a Medicaid department in the area where we lived. She was a manager over people who had degrees. And she would oftentimes say, it kind of surprises me. And I go, does it really, Mom? Does it really? And she'd say,
Exactly.
well, sometimes they talk about how, oh, in college we did this, or in college, because I have no reference for what they're talking about. And I go, yeah, but Mom, you went to the College of Hard Knocks. So you got way over them. And she'd say, yeah, I guess that's true, because she knew what she had. She knew the job. She had started at the very bottom and she had worked her way up. She was a diligent worker. She was no slacker. She was told, this is what you need to do. She'd do it. And they saw that. They saw how committed she was to her work and how well she did her job. And so she ended up with, people under her supervision who were college graduates, younger than she was, but that was okay. And that was how God provided for us. Once she kind of hit that point where she was making a little bit better money, it became a little less at the end of each month, because we had a little bit more of the sustainable income. That was very, very helpful. But again, that story of her not knowing how she didn't have the money. It was not there in her bank account, but God provided in that way.
That is so beautiful.
It is. And I often look at the story of the feeding of the 4,000 and the 5,000 that Jesus does in the Gospels, where what did they start with? 5 loaves of bread, tiny little loaves of bread, 2 fish, 2 little sardines. And God takes those, Jesus takes those, and he feeds over, estimates are 8 to 10,000 people. And that's the beauty of how I think as believers, we need to not be looking at what we don't have, but look at what we do have in the hands of God. Because he will always make more if we are obedient and if we're trusting him to do that. But I know how easy it is to just go, oh, I don't have this and I don't have enough for this, and get all panicky. But I think he calls us to say, don't stop looking at what you don't have and start looking at what I'm going to do with what you do have.
Exactly. Like that. Wow. You really hit something there, because when it comes to looking at what you don't have, like that is really easy to get into that space.
Yeah.
But one thing that came to mind while you were talking was favor ain't fair. So God's favor is not fair. It's not about, like when it comes to God, like, the fact that your mother was promoted and a manager, those college graduates may have felt like it wasn't fair. Favor ain't fair. She had God's favor over her life.
Right.
But then also when you're saying, don't look at what you don't have, look at what you do have. And look whose hands it is, because God is a multiplier.
Yes.
Like Jesus is in the multiplying business, and we see it time after time again in Bible study stories. Even the woman that was down to her last and was like, I was just about to make this last meal for me and my son and die.
Right.
Elijah came and spoiler alert, she didn't die. They didn't die. They had food to last. And the woman that felt like she had to send her children into slavery because of the debt, and instead he said, you have oil, go ask everyone to borrow jars, and take all those jars and to only have that little bit of oil, and instead God made it run over and fill all of those jars until all the debt was paid. Like God multiplies. So it's not about what you don't have. And it's not even about what you do have. It's about whose hands is it in.
Exactly.
if you only have $5 in your hand, you can't do nothing with it. But if
Right.
it's in Jesus' hands, if you're saying, hey, God, I relinquish it all to you, I'm trusting you with this, there's a completely different outcome that we can expect.
Exactly. And I mean, that even brings to mind something else that because of my vision loss, I'm on disability. And when I first was able to find an apartment where I live now on what I had, I looked at how much I was getting, and I looked at my bills, and I went, huh, not quite sure how that's going to play out. And I don't believe in being stupid or careless about just saying, sure, I'm going to take that apartment. But along the way, God provided people who were willing to help me to cover some of my, bills, so that it wouldn't end up me having to default on anything. But then I realized, after I had gotten my apartment and was getting my bills paid, I stopped and I went, oh, wait a minute. I need to make sure that I'm tithing. And I'm
Mhm.
not right now. And I'm looking at my account and I'm going, oh God, I don't know how to do this. I'm not sure what I need to do here. And it was one of those times again where I just said, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do it because you've called me to do it. And I went ahead and I signed up for it to be an automatic payment to my church, because I thought, if I have to write a check out every month or whatever, I'm going to get in my way, and I'm going to say, oh, you don't have enough money this month. Are you sure you want to make it for that much? And I said, the
Mhm.
fact that I don't write it out myself is actually a blessing, because I'm trusting God that what's in my account is that's going to be there to give that tithing to him. And I get a reminder every month that it's gone out. And when I see that, I go, thank you, Jesus, for allowing me to have that money. But yeah, I know myself well enough that I could talk myself out of doing that. But tithing has become something that I think is so important, no matter what little you have. I think that God calls, like you say, he calls us to be generous no matter what the amount is, because it's not the amount, it's the
Mhm.
heart that we're giving.
Yes.
He's calling our heart to be generous with others, because I do have more than a lot of other people do. I realize that it ain't much in the grand scheme of things, but it's a lot more than other people have. But it's not about comparing what I have or what I don't have to other people. It is about my heart before God. Am I willing to say, God, I trust you so much with my finances, with my very measly income right now, that I am saying, I'm giving this back to your church. I'm giving this back to you in a grateful, thankful act of service and submission to you and your will in my life. And so every time we have a church budget meeting, and they have to increase the budget just because of the cost of living things, and people are like, well, I don't know if we want to really be, and I want to stand up and go, excuse me, I'm on an incredibly limited budget. You don't know how many things I give up because I cannot afford it. And I don't consider them giving up. I just say, that isn't what God wants me to have right now. Okay, moving on.
Mhm.
But I get a little annoyed with people who are like, well, I don't know that, we should be giving the church this much money. And I'm like, bah, 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 bah. No, no. That's where I become an advocate for people. Again, not focusing on what they don't have, but focusing on what they do have in the hands of God. So
Yes. I
there's
love
my
it.
soapbox.
I love it. I love it. That is just it's so beautiful. And I have definitely learned about the power of tithing. And that's the one thing that God says, test me on this. Right. He
Yes,
says,
he does. You're right. You're right. Yeah.
and I haven't heard one person say, hey, because I was tithing, I couldn't pay my bills.
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
was tithing, I wasn't able to, fill in the blank.
Right.
And
Right.
the devil wants us to believe that when we tithe, oh, now we're not going to have enough, or that money could have been better spent on fill in the blank. Like, I definitely dealt with that when I first started tithing again, on my faith journey years
Mhm.
ago. And so I used to really, I would say, oh, I gave how much to God this year or to the church this year? They didn't need that money. I could have used that money to do X, Y, Z, because I would see it. It was thousands of dollars. And I was just like, oh my God. But then now it's like, oh my God, I had that much to give God.
Yeah.
And like I look at now when it comes to how much do I have to give as a tithe or whatever, I was like, oh, that's not much in comparison to what I get to keep, in comparison to what God has allowed me to receive.
Right.
And just to be able to say that, God has blessed me to have times where I've had to write a 5-figure time check. And I was like, ooh, I said, but you know what? I'm going to do it because I said, God, I want you to be able to give me some more of these 6-figure checks. Write another 5-figure check so I can start writing a 6-figure time check. I want to get there one day. So it's just like, you know what? Ooh, ouch, that hurts. This could have been XYZ, but I know that in God's hand, it's going to multiply.
Right.
And off of tithing alone, God says that He's going to bless us exceedingly abundantly and beyond.
Right.
And
Right.
so that's
And I'm also just, I mean, we may not agree on this because I know different opinions, but I also believe that when he makes that promise to us that you will be blessed, it isn't always financial blessing.
oh no,
Yeah. Okay.
it's not.
Yeah, because I think a
I'm
lot of people
agreeing
think
with
that.
you.
I think a lot of people think that, oh, well, if I give more to God, He's going to give me more money. It's like, I'm thinking you're reading that wrong, because the blessing comes from
The
the,
fruits of the spirit,
yes, the,
those are
yes,
they are priceless.
absolutely.
When it comes to it, like, because I ain't gonna lie, I used to think that it was monetarily, and I'm like, all right, 10
Yep.
100 fold, I gave 2,000, where's my $200,000 tomorrow, Jesus, I'm looking for, like,
Yeah.
and but instead I've known that in certain situations where like when I had a miscarriage and lost my baby,
Hmm.
or it was an ectopic pregnancy, like that was extremely depressing and hard to go through, to lose a child that I thought was going to be my promised child.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel the weight of that pain because
Mhm.
God gave me peace.
Right. Right.
God gave me peace. So it's just like, sometimes we're looking for the monetary benefit. But I've gone back and looked at like some of the things I've written down and prayed to God for. And now the money parts I have not seen yet. Because I'm asking God for like millions. So, that I have not seen yet. But I have my healthy baby boy.
Yeah.
And like he just turned 1 and now he's walking. I have peace and happiness and joy
Yeah.
where others would think I shouldn't.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so we need to look at it definitely much more than monetary. That's why also success for me is not just monetary.
Right.
Because it doesn't matter if you're rich if you're depressed and suicidal.
Exactly. If you're living a miserable life, but you got lots of money, so what? I mean, and that's just something, I mean, I did have to learn that, but I also believe that, yes, those blessings come from like what we've been talking about, the joy and the enthusiasm for God and for our relationship, and that ability to become more intimately closer to Him, that time that we can spend with Him, that's a blessing. And I'm looking at where I am in my business right now, and I still feel like I'm kind of just sort of getting started. I haven't really hit my stride, but I look at it and I say, but what is my stride, God? What is it that success that I'm looking for? Because everybody defines success in their own way.
They do.
And I was with another coach who was he was the one who helped me to process through the idea of finding my character identity, and he said to me, if you were never paid a penny for going in front of audiences to do a presentation about the health and wellness that you advocate for, or you never got paid for coaching anyone else, would you still do it? And he just finished the question. I went, of course I would. And it surprised
Mhm.
me because I went, oh, I answered that rather quickly, didn't I? And I
Mhm.
thought, I that's how strongly I feel about what God is calling me to do. Now, it would be nice to get paid. Let me
Yeah.
let me say that, but that's not the reason I'm doing it. And but so sometimes I have to be kind of careful with things because I'm like, why do I want to do this? Oh, I got to go do this. I got to go do this. Why do I want to go do that? Am I thinking it's because I'm gonna make money at doing that, or is it because this is where I can serve other people? And so I want to make sure that I'm keeping it in the right category, that I can serve other people is what I really want to do. But if I can get paid at doing it, I prefer that. And that's where I want to go before God with my heart. and say, I want to do this because you've called me, but I don't want to do it because I'm expecting, $1 million next week. Not that that's going to happen anytime soon, but soon. Notice I said soon. But yeah, and I mean that it all comes down to, again, I think, the heart before God. Everything comes back down to the heart before God. How are we giving? How are we living? How are we presenting ourselves to the rest of the world? What do they see? What do they walk away with when they're done with a conversation with us? I go out for a walk almost every day, and I was standing there talking to a couple today, and like 5 other people passed going in different ways, and they're all people that I don't know their names, but we meet on the trail often, and we're all like, "Hi, how are you? Good to see you." And I'm like, it's like we know each other, which we do on a certain level. But my joy, my thought, my realization is I'm meeting total strangers on this trail that I walk. I want them, if we have a brief conversation, to walk away thinking, my goodness, but she's a joyful, cheery person. That's what I want them to think. Because if they see me as grumpy and angry and miserable, that
Mm,
doesn't honor God in any way, and it certainly doesn't encourage or support them, which is what I want to do, even in the simplest act of being on a walk and just saying hi to someone and say, hey, have a great day. I hope you have a great rest of the walk. And so that's, even in that small little way, how can I please God? How can I honor him? How can my heart be right before him in this way?
I love that. I love that. And you have a spirit that I don't see often that, we need to see more of. We need to see more of it in the world, especially in the church as well, because when you have a heart for Jesus and it just kind of is worn on your sleeve like that, I think
Mhm.
that's what makes people like, oh, I want some of whatever she got. She is just so happy. Like, I want some of that. And it just reminds me of like my grandmother's spirit.
Mm.
She was someone that you just saw God's light shining through her with her smile. It brought you joy, made your heart smile. And like that's just what you give off. It's just like your joy, your zeal for life. It makes my heart smile. It makes me happy. Like, I enjoy speaking to you, talking to you, because it's just like, oh, like, it's really just doing something for me just to talk to you. So, like, being a
That's
little
great.
selfish here. Like, it's just
Be
it's
selfish. I'm okay with
but
it.
I really I love it. I love your zeal. I love you walking out your faith. And it's just like you said, you could be looking at it like really different. Oh, well, diabetes or lack of vision, or we could see like where, oh, well, what do you not have? And you could be down and out and depressed and still feeling like you used to feel at 21 when you were first losing your vision. You could have kept that anger. You could have
Yep,
kept on being angry and mad
absolutely.
and hating
Yeah,
the world. But
yeah,
like, instead, like, look at God. Look
yeah,
at what he's doing, what he has done, and how
yeah.
happy you are, and just like the blessing of year after year. They gave you a death sentence, but you
I
still,
surpassed it.
yeah. It, and that is just so beautiful. So I love talking to you, Annette. I'm gonna go ahead and switch notes because I can talk to you all day. Because like I said, selfish for me. Like, I love talking to you. Um,
I
but
enjoy sharing.
yes, thank you. It's an honor. But we're going to transition into our next part where we actually get to talk a little bit about finances. And so I always ask each guest to ask me one question that I can help with on finances. So you had gave me the unknown of keeping track of income, making sure I can maintain my financial goals. And so tell me a little bit more about what you mean by the unknown of keeping track of income.
Well, almost everything that I do, because it's just a funny thing. When I was working at churches, I had a steady, regular income. I
Mhm.
had bills to pay. I knew how to live within my budget, and I did that. And I went for a number of years where I was not, I mean, I wasn't on disability yet. I was living off of my savings. Boy, that's a fun place to
Ooh.
walk through. Yeah, very hard. And so I'm at a point now where I've got disability, and I know that I can make a certain amount over, or I can make a certain amount before disability will say, okay, you're good to go. We're going to take that away from you. And because, once you get into a certain point, and I'm perfectly understandable and accepting of that. I have it because I haven't been able to work a normal job, and this is helping me to survive. I want to be able to replace that disability,
Yeah.
but then to be able to, and I think the problem that I'm dealing with, and it's totally a mental thing, is because as a coach and a speaker, you do not have regular income.
Mm-mm.
And there is where I go, ew. That's something that I'm not really sure I'm comfortable with yet, because your income fluctuates. And I'm like, ah. And so just being able to figure out, as I start to make more money as a coach and as a speaker, getting that in there, figuring out then how can I make it so that I'm not so panicky about not having consistent income? And I don't know if that's a question you could even answer, but I look ahead and I go, I don't know that I know how to do that. I'm not sure I know I have the mental skill set to be able to forecast that whole idea so that I don't put myself in trouble.
So when you do it that way, you have to budget differently. And so it's not going to be monthly income. I'm getting paid $1,500 every first and 15th, or every
Right.
first I get a $3,000 check, or however, it may be.
Right.
Instead, you have to set aside a lot for a rainy day, because there's going to be a lot of rainy days as entrepreneurs, as we know. And
Yes.
so you can have a $50,000 month and then a $0 month, or a negative month, because you still have expenses to cover.
Right.
One of the things to think about first is that when it comes to business income, it shouldn't go straight into your personal account. So this is not money you're necessarily receiving right away, right? Because while it's in the business account, you have business expenses that can
Yeah.
lower that, which changes the amount that you're actually getting out of it before it takes you off of disability.
Right.
So even if you make $10,000, if you have $9,000 of expenses, you're only seeing a net profit of 1,000. And then you could say, oh, well, there is a portion for taxes. So that the business had to pay. So now I only got an extra $400 or $600 or whatever the case may be. So there's ways to diminish that before you have to say, oh, I'm getting off of my safety net of disability
Yeah.
legally.
Yeah.
Legal ways to,
Legal.
navigate that. And then the next thing is to think about really having a strong amount of savings, where maybe you say that I want to have a year's worth of expenses saved up. And that's maybe my first financial goal. And so what you can do is, when it comes to knowing how much money you make and things like that, that gets into a whole like business coaching side. I'm thinking about marketing funnels and ways that you can turn it on or turn it off, so that you can consistently know how many clients at least you're going to get, or how many calls you'll get, and your closing ratios. And that's a whole,
Another area. Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
there's a lot I could go down that rabbit hole, but this just on the finance piece of it, once you've started figuring out the business side of it, how you're getting your money, how you're getting your gigs, whether it's as a speaker, um, being able to get enough of them so that you can sustain yourself, but
Right.
also as a coach, getting enough clients to sustain yourself, knowing your numbers there that you're trying to achieve each and every month is going to be important.
Yeah.
Um, but also giving yourself a safety net, because you may have a month where you start killing it and start getting 20 clients and you're like, oh my God, I got more people than I can handle. I don't know what to do. And then you're going to have times where it's like, God, it's crickets out here.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
going on? Did I lose it? Am I doing something wrong? Are you punishing me? I just came
Yeah.
off disability. What's going on here?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think the important thing is to say, let me make sure I have a very strong cushion before I start saying how much I can spend this money. Because usually when people get a windfall of cash, they want to treat themselves. They want to
Oh
give
yeah.
themselves everything that they've been deprived of. And I say, stop, pay your future self first.
Right.
We can
Right.
do that by making sure we have a much heftier emergency fund than maybe those that have a 9 to 5, because they feel
Yeah.
like they have predictable income, which is not so predictable if they can fire you tomorrow and you lose your one and only source of income, right?
True.
But nonetheless, we don't have that safety net.
Yeah.
when it comes to that. And so instead, you need to say, let me have a year's worth of expenses maybe set aside so that if I have a couple of months where I have to live off of savings, I will be perfectly fine. I will not stress. I will
Right.
not give that desperation to my clients as if they need
Yeah.
to pay my bills today. Um,
Right.
and I can still sell from a place of integrity
Yeah.
because I'm not looking for them to pay my bills. I'm looking to serve them and just be of great
Right.
help. And so
Right.
I think that's important so that we can keep our heart posture right is to plan for the rainy days instead of just saying, I got money, let's go spend it all. Like I am you a shopping spree. Like, well, I'm going to every spot every day, or whatever it is that you may have is your thing.
Yep.
Um, and like pay yourself first by putting that in savings. And then afterwards, make sure all bills are paid and
Right.
still have savings that you accumulate. Don't say, "Oh, now that I have a year's worth of savings, I'm never going to save again." No, you
Oh
can
no.
still save for
Right.
big expenses and purchases that you want to make in the future, other goals that you have.
Yeah.
Make it a habit to save. Get in that habit of it so that you know what to do with it, and also enjoy yourself. Give yourself a percentage to enjoy. Give yourself a percentage to throw away, so to speak, like whatever makes you truly happy. So
Right. Right.
I think that's very important too. So if we give ourselves a little bit like of space to act a little reckless, and maybe we act reckless with 5% of what
Yeah.
came in, something that's not going to kill us, but it's just like, hey, look, I got to
Right.
spend some money however I saw fit, and that made me happy.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you. That just kind of takes a little pressure off of me as you were talking. I'm like, okay, I don't need to stress about this. She's making good sense here, and I like that. I understood what you were saying too. I've talked with many financial people who, after they're done, I'm like, I have no idea what they just said, but you spoke my language, so I appreciate that tremendously. So yeah, that makes sense too. I mean, actually, what you've talked about, I have in my mind said, I think this is what I need to do. I think this is the
Hmm.
direction, but now you just confirmed that. So awesome.
I'm
Awesome.
happy to help. I know there's a lot of people that make a lot of money off of trying to keep finances complicated, and because that means that you need them.
Right.
And so I just feel like that's just icky.
Yeah.
That's just not the way to do things.
Yeah.
I know that my clients will not always need me. I know that it's like, I'm in a business where I will have to constantly try and find new clients because I
Yeah.
really want my clients to walk away and they really know how to handle their finances so well. They're like, hey, I don't need Brie anymore. Maybe I want
Oh,
to check in to see how our kids are doing, but um,
yeah.
I
I
don't.
mean, that's actually a great, it's almost like you're being a really good, responsible parent because you're teaching them how to do things on their own and then saying, come visit, but go away now. I mean, not in that way, but you're like, you don't need me anymore because I've taught you what you needed. And you've given them hopefully a sense of confidence and of assurance in themselves and what you have taught them. I mean, that's a gift, girl. That is a huge gift that you are giving them. So, yeah, you are going to need to keep having clients come in. God will provide. God will provide. So,
Exactly. He will. And I just give it all to God. I trust in him.
yeah.
So I'm happy I can help in that way. But thank you so much for coming here, Annette, because your story is so powerful. Your mom's story is powerful, even just the pieces of it I've gotten to know about her. Um,
Yeah.
that is just so beautiful. And I mean, you are just a blessing. I just have to tell you. Like
Thank you. And it's just such fun to talk to you. I remember our first meeting. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's one of my people. She loves the Lord and she knows how to, I mean, she's just responsible and reliable. And it's just like you spoke my language and I thought, oh, this is wonderful. I love talking to her some more. So thank you.
I love it. Well, thank you, Annette. Also to everyone, this episode is sponsored by the Financial Freedom Plan, where I can help you get to know more about your money and your finances. You create a custom financial plan that actually works for you. I don't give you a cookie cutter model that worked for me or worked for previous clients only. I help you to create a custom plan that actually suits your needs and what you're looking for so that you can reach your dream goals and live out your dream life daily. If you want to find out more, go to bdsmithfinancial.com/work with me or bdsmithfinancial.com click one of the many schedule call buttons up there, and you will be able to get a free financial breakthrough call so that you will be on your way to living your perfect day daily. All right.
Do
Well,
it, people. Do it. Do it. Contact her. I'm telling you, it's worth your time.
thank you so much, Annette. I love it. Love you guys. And we will talk again next week with a new guest, or maybe I'll do one by myself. I'm still thinking about it. All right. Bye.